Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics video on the channel. It is captain time. It's Thursday, so we're going to be chatting captains ahead of round 2. Last week, captains, not too bad. Pretty good in top 5. I think a lot of people had some good top 5s last week. So what do we have? We had Max Gawn at number 1 with a 127. Tristan Cherry at number 2 with a 129. Jordan Dawson at 3 with a 126. We had Andrew Brayshaw was the only disappointing player in the top 5 with the 95. And then at 5, we had Connor Rozee at 112. So a pretty good top 5 average. And I think in general, our top 10 were pretty good as well. So let's hope we can pick some more good captains in round 2. And let's get started for who the number 1 option is for round 1. So coming in at number 1, I've got Port captain Connor Rozee. So this got a few factors to it, and it's not just fantasy related. So obviously, poor performance from Port Adelaide against Collingwood last week. Obviously, a 90-point loss away from home. First game of the season, not the start they want. All the pressure on Port. And every show you watch, 360, on the couch, whatever show you watch, Channel 7, Fox Footy, whatever. It's all Port is pretty much the first topic they talk about and like what's happening at Port. I just think Connor Rozee, captain of the club, back at home against Richmond. Yes, I know they beat Carlton last week, but I could see Port breathing fire and wanting a big win. And I could see this game where, if you guys remember that Port Adelaide Bulldogs game last year where I think it was Connor Rozee and Zach Butters were on like 80 points or 90 points, something like that at halftime. I could see that being a case here, potentially with a Rozee and a Horn France. So I could see Port having a big win here and these guys going off to a big start. So Rozee's average at home last year, 107.3 from 11 games. Obviously a very, very good average. That's including the 51 that he was had obviously in the showdown when he was injured, and then the 89 from 3 quarters that he got against St Kilda. Remove those, 115.6 average from the 9 games at home. So great average at home. Last 4 against Richmond as well, 100, 116, 138 and 102. So, and that was 100 as well. I'm pretty sure he got subbed out sometime last quarter. I don't know if it was tactically, but I remember he got subbed out and that could have been bigger. So good recent history against Richmond. I see him being a very good option, and I've got him as my number 1 option in round 2. At number 2, we're going to the other skipper in South Australia, and that is Jordan Dawson up against Essendon. So obviously he was fantastic last week, 126, looked great, kicked a couple of goals. Last 3 against Essendon, he scored an 81 in just under 3 quarters, got concussed in that game there. But then the 2 before that, 155 and then a 128. And that 128 was at Marvel as well. The 155 was Adelaide Oval last year when he copped a bit of attention from Sam Durham, which I expect that to go his way this week. I just don't think it's going to make a huge deal. I know Redmond and Durham tagged Will Day last week. I think Redmond goes back into defence this week with Jordan really injured. So maybe Durham will tag Dawson this week. But I don't think it'll matter a huge amount. I think MCG, we know Dawson's had some really good games there. Obviously, we know that he scored that 172 against Collingwood there. So I could see a big score coming here. He's in form in the preseason and in round 1. So I think he's got to be high up on our list. And I've got him at number 2 with the form against Essendon, his recent form, and being at the MCG, which I like. Coming in at number 3, this is a bit of a different one. Normally, most people say a few of the options here, but I'm going to go down the list, and I'm going to go with Lachie Neale. So not a highly owned player in Classic for us. A lot of people got him in drafts. He's obviously a Supercoach relevant player there. 37 last week was not what we would have wanted and not what Lachie Neale owners would have wanted, right? But I had a look last year at games where when Lachie Neale dropped a sub-90 score, what did he score the following week? So looking at last year, some of these games. So he played opening round, missed a couple of weeks, come back and scored a 118. So probably a little bit different where he missed a few weeks, right? Scored a 62 in round 7, came back with a 137. Scored an 80 in round 9, came with a 122. Scored a 50 in round 14, 135 the following week. 69 in round 19, following week 129. 87 in round 23. Obviously scored a 69 before that, but 2 poor performances. Finished off with a 139. So more often than not, Lachie Neale comes back after having a poor game and goes big. And in those 6 games, actually, I just referenced 130 average. So he goes big. Not only that, he's got West Coast. And we know West Coast is going to be a good matchup again. We saw it last week with Gold Coast. A few of those players racked up, particularly the midfielders. So we're seeing I'm just getting up here like those Gold Coast players from last week. So a few of the midfielders last week against West Coast. So you saw like Noah Anderson with a 117, Matt Ragg got a 108, Toot Miller got a 95, like there, and 95% Tom McGran as well. Hang on. No, it's just saying total score. Disregard that comment. Anyway, but yeah, those midfielders got involved with it. I just think Lachie Neale will do the same. So Lachie Neale's previous 5 games against West Coast, 133, 127, 113, 110, and the 126. That was in 2020. So that's more like a 150 when you sort of times that by the BCV and all that sort of stuff. So great recent history against West Coast. Coming off a bad score, I expect him to respond, have a big game, and I've got him as my number 3 option. Obviously, not a lot of us in Classic own Lachie Neale. I think a few might be targeting him in a few weeks when he drops down. So like Lachie Neale's ownership currently at the moment, it's only 4.4%. But for those 4.4%, I think he could be a pretty good captain option on the Sunday, with obviously the top 2 playing on the Saturday. So you could go VC into Lachie Neale if you do own him. But for draft, really like him as a captain option. Coming at number 4 is his teammate, Josh Dunkley. So I've just gone Lachie Neale ahead just because I think that he will respond after having a poor game. But Josh Dunkley last week, 130, looked fantastic, filled up all the stat sheet. Obviously, the only thing was a lot of those other Brisbane mids were poor. So Lachie Neale, Will Ashcroft, Hugh McCluggage, a few of those guys didn't really rack up. So those guys will get amongst, I think, this week. I think Josh Dunkley will do the same. Scored 106 against West Coast last year. So I think he'll go really well. I think he's a lot more popular in Classic, and a lot more people probably got him higher. I just think that Neale, with the poorer game, might respond, and at the Gabba as well. But Josh Dunkley could easily be the guy that does outperform him. I wouldn't, would it shock me if like a Lachie Neale sat forward for a quarter or something like that? I don't think Lachie Neale's a type player they're going to sub out. That would be someone like a Zorko or someone like that. But I still think Neale and Dunkley will both rack up. So I've got them both in my top 5. And then at number 5, another guy that's had a little bit of a slower start than what we're normally used to is Nick Daicos. I think that against the Dogs under the... this isn't under the roof. I made that mistake with a Game Day Squad stream last night. This is at the MCG. But Nick Daicos, last 2 against the Dogs, 110 and 112. So a couple of decent scores there. No tag coming for Nick Daicos, I don't believe. Do they use like a Harms to run with him potentially? I just think Daicos, this is the sort of matchup I could see him racking up in. No Bont, no Treloar. I think he's going to go really, really well against Bulldogs. And we even saw last week, we saw some of these North players obviously rack up as well, like a Josh Simpkin with a 125, a Tom Powell with a 121. We even saw a Harry Sheezer 114 as well. So we did see some of those midfielders really get involved for North Melbourne, and I think Nick Daicos is definitely going to get amongst the scores and is in my top 5. Moving through to the next 5, so at number 6, I do have Dane Zorko. I think the reason I don't have him in the top 5 is just that worry that if they are up by a lot, he would be one of those guys that you could see being subbed out in the 4th quarter maybe. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. Obviously, injuries can happen and that might not happen. But I think Zorko will still go well regardless. His last 4 against West Coast, 85 last year, then a 55 where he was subbed tactically, so that he might have been on for a good score there. But then a 132 and a 113 before that. Obviously, they're different roles. And the only reason that he's also at the top 5 is because the fact that West Coast don't necessarily give up huge points to defenders. I do think, though, Zorko's a bit of a different defender where he demands the ball, gets around for these little short +6. Obviously, the umpires have been hot on that to start the year. But I think at the Gabba, I think that helps a lot. That 85 was at Optus Stadium. I think at the Gabba, it does help Zorko. So he is my number 6. Number 7, I've got Harry Sheezel. So Harry Sheezel coming against Melbourne. Top scored in the game last year against them with a 111. A low-scoring fantasy game, that one was. So I think I don't know if someone would necessarily run with him. I don't know who exactly from Melbourne would be tagging him, but I think that he'll go well. If anyone's going to... I still think if anyone's getting attention, it's LDU. So I think Sheezel runs free, and I think he'll put up a pretty solid score against Melbourne. I believe that one is under the roof at Marvel. So Sheezel should be good this week. Coming at number 8, I've got Tristan Cherry, the Big X. Good score last week, 129. Huge last quarter with like 47 points, and that was with 0 tackles as well, so that was good. Tough matchup, though, against Gawn. I couldn't bump him out completely out of my top 10, so he still had to be inside the top 10. He's just obviously down the list just because of the tougher matchup. I still think he can put up a good score. Like, I know it's against Max Gawn, but that game he scored 99 against them last year was a low-scoring fantasy game. Only 2 or 3 tons, I believe, were from that game. I just think Tristan Sherry's a better ruckman than what he was when he played Melbourne last year. I know there are a lot of the easier matchups to finish the year last year, but I just think that he's gotten better. That game was in round 15, so obviously that was in that patch where Tristan Sherry was going really well. 2 tons. She's with a 111, Rivers with a 110, and then Sherry was next with 99. He had 20 hitouts, 10 tackles, and 17 touches. I felt that could almost be a baseline for what we can expect. I think his tackles will be there. Melbourne are a high stop. I think they're a pretty high stoppage team, obviously, with those midfielders. Didn't kick on that. But yeah, 17 touches, 20 hitouts. Could even see that hitout total be a bit more. There wasn't actually that many hitouts in that game, so only 65 hitouts combined between anyone that took a hitout or got a hitout. So I think Sherry will be good. Whether he's going to be obviously his lofty sort of 120 best, or if he's just going to be a solid 110, I think it's probably more the solid 110 this week. But I think he'll be okay. Number 9, Tom De Koning. So we saw what he did last week with a 132. He was fantastic, just as that extra midfielder for Carlton. One of the main reasons why they were sort of staying in the game. He 28 disposals is just absolutely ridiculous. 3 marks, 5 tackles, and 30 hitouts. I think we can expect similar sort of hitouts against a Lloyd Meek. And I think Tom De Koning will be able to get Meek around the ground as well. So I like Tom De Koning there. Could be higher, maybe could be a couple of spots higher, and he's a pretty solid VC option tonight against Hawthorn. And then rounding out my top 10 is Zach Merritt. So I got Zach Merritt in here. Last 3 against Adelaide, 109, 103, and 150. That 109 was tagged by, I remember Hugh Bond went to him in that game. I don't think Crow's going to be doing any tagging jobs in this game here. If anyone was to do that, do they do does Peatling potentially run with a Merritt? Does maybe a Ben Keys or something like that? I don't think Keys is doing any of those roles or anything anymore. I don't think Crows will tag him. I think that they'll just go head-to-head with the Essendon mids. So Zach Merritt could have a solid day. I've just got him a bit lower just because I know the Crows have not necessarily been the easiest team to score against even last year. And obviously not many Saints players scored well on the weekend. I expect Essendon to be better than what St Kilda were. But yeah, I think Merritt will go okay against the Crows at the MCG, which is interesting. A couple of the Marvel games you'd normally expect all at the MCG. Obviously, the Dogs celebrating their 100th year anniversary. That obviously makes a bit of sense. It's at the MCG. Bigger ground, a lot more people can go. But yeah, Crows, Essendon, I didn't expect that to be at the MCG. I thought that'd be at Marvel, but that's how it goes. 4 players probably I didn't mind that just missed out. So Jack McRae against Geelong and Jack Steele. I expect Jack Steele to bounce back. I know he scored a 77, but I expect him to bounce back. I didn't have him in my top 10 because St Kilda, I don't know exactly how they're going to go with fantasy in some games, so they're a bit unpredictable week to week, but I think those guys can still go all right. Geelong are a good matchup as well. Jason on France against Richmond. I think a Camden McIntosh, who ran a little bit with Paddy Cripps last week, probably goes to a Horn Francis. I still think Horn Francis will have a solid game. And then the other one I don't mind, actually, funny enough, in that St Kilda Geelong game is Bailey Smith. Could go really well. Obviously had a really good score against Freo last week at 126. This is back under the roof at Marvel. So I could see Bailey Smith putting up a big score in that game. Guys like a Tom Stewart as well. Max Holmes could be solid VC shouts if you didn't have a Rosie or a Dawson, but I think a lot of people have got some of those guys or some of the other guys that play earlier, so that's why they're not there. Even Inver Petrarca and Oliver as well could be solid shouts against North. Even just some of the guys on list here. So obviously we talked about a few of these here. Who haven't we talked about? Gordon against Sherry could be okay. 127 last week, obviously a good matchup there. Obviously we know the Big X is a tougher matchup for Ruck, so that's why Gordon isn't in the top 10 for me this week. Just mentioned Petrarca there, could be all right. Jai Caldwell could be good as well. Bit of a smoky there, plays early in the round, so could be a VC if you've got him. Nankin gets Sweet is also could be okay. If it was at the MCG, it'd be a bit different, but I think at Adelaide Oval, maybe Richmond might not score as many points. Will Day I wouldn't look at just with the potential tag by George Hewitt tonight. I hope he goes well. Obviously, he's an owner, and I'm sure a lot of us will hope he goes well. But I'm not sure about him as a captain. Brayshaw and Sarong as well, I would not be looking at all this week against Sydney. Tough matchup. Wouldn't be shocked if a Rowbottom went to Sarong and Jordan went to Brayshaw, and they do sort of shut both down. But then you could just see like a Jordan go to Sarong, or Rowbottom goes to Sarong and Jordan goes to a Jordan Clark maybe, but I wouldn't be looking at either of those guys. Libba could be a solid shout as a bit of a pod as well on Friday night if you've got him against Collingwood, a decent enough matchup there. Nasai could be good as well. Obviously, mentioned Oliver before. I think he goes over a ton this week and goes well. Where they use Will Phillips again on him. Obviously, shut him down last year, but obviously we know that wasn't the real Oliver that we were watching. And even a Tom Power could have a good game, but I wouldn't be looking at him as captain. Will Ashcroft as well, bit of a smoky as well if you wanted to go real rogue for a captain pick as well. Isaac Rankin. But there's all good players again have good scores, but in terms of captains, obviously a few of them aren't in the mix. So they're my top 5 this week. And obviously with this, I'm going to be going Jordan Dawson, vice-captain, into Connor Rozee, who they both play back-to-back, which is good. I'll be watching both games, so I'll be able to sort of keep track and see how Dawson goes. Hopefully goes well, and don't have to worry about Rozee. But Rozee against Richmond, I'd be very happy to do that. I also considered going Rozee VC into a Tristan Sherry to get the look at the Rozee score. I just think I think I'll go Dawson into Rozee this week. So, but yeah, they're my top 5. That's what I'm looking at doing this week. In terms of lines for VCs, I'm pretty sort of settled on, I'd take a 110 to start the year for the first 4, 5, 6 weeks. 110 is fine. And obviously for the next 3 weeks, most people will be able to use a loophole there as well. So yeah, I'm pretty settled on 110, but maybe some people look more for 115, 120. But hey, if they go 120, hopefully Dawson just does that, and I take that score anyway. So yeah, that is my top 10 and then my top 5 on the screen for you guys there. But let me know in the comments below, guys, what you guys think of the top 5 and the top 10, and if you agree or disagree with any of my picks that are there as well. And let me know who you guys are going with your captain and vice captain this week. I'd be interested to know who you guys are picking this week in your for your C and VC in AFL Fantasy, and could be draft as well. Let me know as well in there. But yeah, if you want to head over to our Patreon, become Patreon member, head to patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics to get in all the action over there. Plenty of good content and all sorts of team reviews and all that sort of stuff. So if you want to check that out, link is in the description below. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. In terms of likes, we can get 50 to 100 or more. That'd be absolutely fantastic. And subscribers, we're nearly, I think we just passed 3,400, going for 3,500, and then 4K by the end of the season is our big goal. So if you can help us reach that goal, that would be absolutely fantastic. And yeah, we're back later on tonight for another watch-along for the Carlton and Hawthorn game. So a couple of teams we did watch-alongs for last week, going head-to-head. Should be good fun. And then we've got our pre-lockout chat tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Perth time as well. So make sure you guys tune to that to get more of your questions answered as well. And may even have a watch along for the Friday night game, Bulldogs Collingwood as well. So that should be another good game. So cool. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. And we'll catch you guys later on tonight for our watch along. And then tomorrow for our pre-lockout chat. So thanks everyone. And good luck for Thursday night footy. See ya.